Masechet Taanit of 21, all full of stories today about various righteous people. We're going to start off with a story because we were talking about the prohibition not to enter a dilapidated building or be under a wall. So another story about that. And then we'll see more stories about places where a famine came to one area, but not another. And the responses of rabbis when they decided to make a fast, even in areas that were farther away. But a lot to learn from these stories. So we begin, Ilfa v'Rabbi Yochanan, these two sages who studied together, Havu Garseh be'oraita, they were studying Torah, but they were really impoverished, and the pressure became too much, and so they said, we can't make a living. So they said, we'll stop learning and we're going to go into business. After all, the Torah and Devarim says that it's talking about that you should give to the poor, so that eventually, if you help the poor, then there will be no more poor among you. And we are poor, we're dependent on others, and we shouldn't be. So we'll go into business so that at least two people now will get out of poverty and won't have to rely on the community. So they happen to be sitting under a rickety wall. Now, why are they doing it? We just said you shouldn't. So probably they didn't look at it carefully and they didn't realize that it was dilapidated. So they happened to be sitting there. And they broke bread together, and two angels came and were watching them. Rabbi Yochanan overheard one angel saying to the other, and now's our chance. Let's throw this rickety wall down upon them and kill them. And whenever people put themselves in a dangerous situation, then that it puts them in real danger. And then the angels are like, maybe they deserve it. Being a dangerous situation means you're going to be judged to see if you deserve to be saved. And one angel said they don't deserve it because they're leaving the eternal life, meaning the study of Torah, and they decided to just go into business, which is only temporal life. The other angel said, leave them alone, because one of them, their time is yet to come, their time to shine. One of them is going to become not just a student, but is going to become a teacher, a sage, a Rosh Yeshiva. So Rabbi Yochanan Shema, Ilfa lo Shama. Rabbi Yochanan was able to overhear these angels speaking. Ilfa, however, was not able to overhear. Interesting, Ilfa never gets a title of rabbi, so you could see that he wasn't at the same level. Amar le Rabbi Yochanan le Ilfa, Shama mor midi. Rabbi Yochanan says to Ilfa, did you hear anything? Is it only me? And he says, yeah, it's only you. Why? Amar le la, I didn't hear anything. Amar mideshamai ana ve'ilfa la shama shema minele didi kaimali sha'ata. So Rabbi Yochanan, since I overheard the angels and Ilfa didn't overhear them, it must be they're talking about me, that I have a lot of potential and my time is still to come. I'm going to become Rosh Yeshiva, and this is a bad decision. If I go now into business, I'm going to lose out this opportunity. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, ihadar ve'okeh benafshai, ki lo yechta levyon micherev haaretz. This is a great line. Rabbi Yochanan says to Ilfa, I changed my mind. I'm not going to go with you on this business trip. I'm going to go back home and learn Torah and fulfill a different verse. This pasuk is in the same, a few pasukim later from the other one, that says, you should always give a charity because there will always be poor in the land. If you look at the Pisukim and Devarim, you see it's a paradox. They're both ways of encouraging the landowners to give. First, because you should try your best to try to solve poverty, but you should know that it probably will never be solved. There's always going to be poor. So be generous and open your hand. So that this story is taking advantage of that contradiction within this chapter, to say Rabbi Yochanan changes his mind. Oh yeah, there's another pasuk. Like whatever path you choose, you can justify with one pasuk or another. I said there's always going to be poor people, so you know what? I may as well be poor, but at least I will learn Torah. Rabbi Yochanan hadad, ilfa lo hadad. Adata ilfa melich Rabbi Yochanan. So Rabbi Yochanan went back. Ilfa did not go back to study Torah, and by the time Ilfa came back from his business trip, Rabbi Yochanan became a Rosh Yeshiva. Amru lo I ativ mor v'gares lahava marich mor. So everyone said to Ilfa, if you had sat and studied instead of going business, then maybe you would have been appointed. Azal tela nafshe be'askaria disfinta. But Ilfa was not deterred. Ilfa wanted to prove that even though he went on business, he did not lose his learning. He kept up, and he's still a master of Torah. And he wanted to prove it with the following test. He suspended himself from the mast of a ship all the way up high, and he climbed all the way up there, and he said, a challenge. Amar i'ika deshair li bematnita de Rabbi Chiya Rabbi Oshaya. Vela pashtina le mimatnitin nafilna me'askaria desfinta v'tabana. Says, I challenge anyone to ask me any baraita from the collection of Rabbi Chiya and Rabbi Oshaya. They were famous for collecting baraitot. And tell me a baraita, and I will show you the source of that baraita from the Mishnah. This is a very hard thing to do. A Mishnah is more limited. It's a closed canon, and there are many more baraitot that were not included in the Mishnah. But this is very interesting. He's assuming that everything, all of Torah Sheba'al Peh, all the baraitot are somehow encoded within the Mishnah. That the Mishnah is a very concise document, but within it, if you know it well and know it carefully, you can derive from it all of the laws. And he said, I know how to do that. This is quite amazing. You have to know the whole Mishnah, and also have to be really brilliant in knowing how to derive one principle for another, one case from even a hint in the Mishnah. And if not, if you tell me something and I don't know it, I will jump from this mast and be drowned. All right, he's putting himself in another dangerous situation here. So let's see what happens. Atahu Saba, an elder came, Tanale Haomer. Tenu shekel lebanai b'Shabbat. Here's the braita that he presents him. He says, you're going to have to prove this from a Mishnah. If someone on his deathbed says, I want you to give a shekel to my sons every week to sustain them, as opposed to usually a person will leave his whole estate to his sons, but maybe, for example, the estate is large and he doesn't want his young sons to be spoiled and not work. But he wants them to be taken care of somewhat. He says this language, I want the person in charge to give a shekel every week. But based on the needs, you look at how big their families are. They would need a selah more, double the amount of a shekel. Notnin lahem selah. Then we should allow them, the children, to get a selah. The point is that we look at the father's intentions. He didn't mean literally only a shekel. He meant an amount that would sustain them, but not more than that. And so we can estimate what that is, and that if it's a selah, then we follow a selah. We follow his intention, not his literal words. But if the father on his deathbed said, only give them a shekel, well, then that language is clearer that he means it literally only a shekel. He wasn't just saying in general a coin. And then in that case, you give him only a shekel. That's all in the Braita. The Braita continues. Imamar imetu Yeshua acharim tachtehem ben shamar tinu ben shamar al titinu en notin lahem ela shekel. If on his deathbed the father said that should my sons die, then that part of the inheritance should go to a third party, and he names some person. So in that case, then whether he said the word tenu, like the first formulation, or if he said the second formulation, don't give them anything more than a shekel, it doesn't matter. We only give a shekel. The point here is that even if he just said the general give a shekel, once he says that if my kids die, it should go to someone else, you see his point was not to take care of the kids, because if it was just take care of the kids, then there would be no need to give that amount to a third party. So once he's giving it to a third party, then it means only that specific amount. He didn't mean take care of the kids, whatever they need. Okay, that is the whole Braita. And you don't find anything about this in the Mishnah. Mishnah does not include this case. So this is a real challenge that this elder gave him. He's up on the mast and he has to come up with the answer. And Ilfa says, Amar le hamane, Rabbi Meir hi, Amar misva lekayim divrei hamet. So he says, oh, I know that follows Rabbi Meir. In the Mishnah, Rabbi Meir says that you always have to follow the words of someone who is on of the dead, someone who was on his deathbed, someone in his will. You follow their words, as opposed to another opinion that says, no, we follow the regular law and all the money will go to the children. Here it says we follow the intent and the letter of the will of the deceased. That's Rabbi Meir. So all this is simply an application of Rabbi Meir's principle. So there you go. See, Ilfa, even though he went to study, he didn't give up on Torah, but that was not his destiny. So this is a really a fun story, but also an important story. It shows that there's always a tension between either studying Torah and being poor and relying on the community versus going and making and going into business, where one's Torah learning, even if it's top notch like Ilfa, will not be as top as Rabbi Yochanan. And maybe here the point is that Rabbi Yochanan felt himself that he's destined for great things. So for him, it's worth that effort and worth it for the community to sustain him while he's poor to go to that extent. Whereas for Ilfa, although he was a great Talmid Chacham, was not going to become the head of a yeshiva, and so for that person, it was better for him to combine his Torah study with business. So this is very relevant today as well, and this is a good story to use as guidance. Okay, Amru alav al Nahum ish gam zu shehaya soma mishete einav gidem mishete yadav kitaya mishete raglav bechol gufo mahle shechin. We're going to quote another famous story. It has to do also with a rickety building. And so it's about Nahum ish gam zo. His name actually was really Gimzo. He came from a town called Gimzo. It was a town. We know where it is, near Lod. But they made a play of words on his name, that because he always was positive, even in terrible situations, he kept an optimistic attitude. So they called him Nahum, who says Gamzu letova. This also is for good. So let's see this tragic story about him. He was blind in both eyes. His arms were both amputated. His legs were both amputated. And above all that, his entire body was full of boils, which are so itchy, and he couldn't even itch them. It's terrible. And for after all that, he lived in a dilapidated house, and the legs of his bed were in buckets of water, so the ants wouldn't be able to climb up. They can't swim. Otherwise, if they climbed up on the bed and they crawled on him, he wouldn't be able to shoo them off. And that would be even more painful. So he was still a great sage. The students came to study with him, and the students wanted to help him out. So they wanted to move him out of this rickety house. So they said, first, let's get him out of his bed, and then we'll take out all the other furniture and vessels. But Nahum Ish Gamzo said, no, the opposite. First, take out all the stuff, and then take out me with the bed. שמובטח לכם שכל זמן שאני בבית אין הבית נופל. פינו את הכלים ואחר כך פינו את הבית, את מיטתו, ונפל habayit. He said, you can be sure that as long as I'm in the house will not fall. Right? We talked about how by the merit of a great person, it will not fall. We saw that a lot of sages didn't want to use up their merit for this, but he happened to already be in the house, so he didn't want to fall. And so he says, leave me in the house first. It's not going to fall while I'm in it. And so they did. They took out the furniture and then took him out. And as soon as he got out of the house, in fact, did fall down. The students see you're so righteous that this amazing miracle happened for you, that the house stayed strong while you were in it. So had it such a terrible suffering come upon you. Amar lehem banai ani garamti la'atzmi. He says, I caused it to myself. What happened? I was going once on the road to my father-in-law's house. And I was bringing a whole feast with me, 3 donkey loads, one full of food, one full of drink, and one full of desserts. A poor person stopped me on the road. He says, Master, please give me something to eat. Okay, obviously in this case, you can't say, oh, I have nothing on me. It was evident he has 3 donkey loads of food. So he had no excuse. He didn't want to make an excuse. He's a Sadiq and he wanted to help out. So he said, just hold on a minute. I want to unload the donkey. So when you're on the road and you load the donkey, you do everything perfectly. Like when you have to load up a car and you got to fit everything in. And if you move one thing, then it won't fit back. So he says, let me unload the donkeys. It's a process. And then I'll get plenty of food and I'll feed you, right? Just wait here for a minute. But by the time I didn't get a chance to unload while I was doing that, I didn't get a chance to unload the donkey and the poor person died. In other words, he was on his last bit of strength. He was so famished that he couldn't last even that few minutes. Halachti v'nafalti al panav amarti aynai shelo chasu alenecha yisomu. So Nachum felt so bad for him that he fell on his face in shame and he cursed himself. He says, these eyes that had no compassion on you, they should go blind. These hands that didn't have compassion on your hands, they should be cut off. My legs, which had no compassion on your legs, like we're the same. I should have taken care of you as I would myself. So my legs should be that didn't run fast enough should be cut. And all those curses wasn't enough. I still was so upset at myself that I added another curse that my body should be full of boils. And the student says, woe to us that we have to see you in such a sad state. And Nachum says, what would be to me if you didn't see me in this way? If I didn't have these curses come upon me that I deserve because I indirectly killed a man. And so I deserve these, and I'd rather be atoned in this way than lose my merit for the world to come. So that's the story of how he became in this way. It's a pretty extreme story, but maybe if we think of it as, in terms of EMT worker, you come to a scene and you see someone bleeding and he says, oh, okay, he needs a tourniquet. We never got to put pressure on this. And he says, okay, wait here. I have an old t-shirt in this suitcase, right? And wait till I take it out. And he takes out his trunk and finds it and puts everything neatly. Okay, it takes 3 minutes. By the time he gets back to him, the guy is dead. Right? When there's an emergency situation and you jump and drop everything and do it. And so he wasn't sensitive enough to see that the poor person was on his last leg and was more concerned about keeping everything neat. Okay, so that's Nachum, and you see he still has a positive attitude. He says, "Oh, this is one gamzo letovah. This is good that I can be atoned for the sin that I made." That is not how he got his name originally. He got his optimistic attitude even in a story before this story happened. Everything that would happen to him, he said, this too is for the good. One time, Jewish people wanted to send a gift. Doron, a good Greek word, means gift. To the emperor. Amru man Yezel, who should we send? Yezel Nachumish Gamzu, the Milumad Benisin, who let's send Nachumish Gamzu. So obviously this story happened before the one before, otherwise he wouldn't walk. So this is when he was still healthy. And because he is so great, he can do miracles, and we want to make sure that this chest full of fine jewels and everything gets there safely, and the emperor will accept it from us. So we got to send someone with protection. שדרו בידי במלוא שפתה דאבנים טובות ומרגליות. So they sent in his hands, see, he has to have hands, but not literally. They sent with him a chest full of jewels and pearls. Azal bat Be'ahu dira, and he went and slept in a certain inn. בלליה קמו הנח דיורה ושקלינו לשפתה ומלון הוא עפרה. While he was in this inn, there was some shady characters there, other residents, and they saw he has this fancy box with him, and so they opened up the chest and they took all of the precious jewels, and they put afra, they put dirt in it. They were smart. They didn't just empty it and run, right? They filled it with other things that would be just as heavy, and that way nobody would notice, and they can get away with it. In some editions, there's an added line that says Nahum opened the box in the morning and said, "This is also for good." But that doesn't make sense, because if he saw there was dirt in the box, he certainly would not have continued on his journey. So it means he didn't open the box in the morning and he thought there's still jewels, and he picks it up and goes. Kimata hatam, he gets to the emperor's palace. Shirin hu lisifta. And they opened this chest, chazanu debalu afra, and everyone saw it's full of dirt. The king said, "Off with everyone's heads." Right? What is this? What kind of insult is? They bring me a gift of dirt. See, the Jews are mocking me by bringing this. Amar gamzu letova. Nahum, even in this dire situation, right? The king just sentenced them to death. He says, "This is also for good," right? And somehow this will work out. Ata Eliyahu idamelek yahad minayu. Eliyahu Navi comes to the rescue. He appears to them like a Roman minister. No, this is not regular dirt. Maybe this is special dirt that Abraham, their forefather, used when he went out to war. It's magic fighting dirt. And this dirt, when you throw it up, it turns into swords. Okay. And if you throw up stubble, it turns into arrows. Abraham was able to do that. Says that his sword makes them as dust, his bow as driven stubble. Okay, so there you go. Maybe this is some magic that the Nevi'im were referring to that Abraham had. Happens to be that the Roman Empire was fighting in a certain province, and they couldn't win this battle. They kept trying. So he said, test it out over there, bring it to that front line, and let's see if this new secret weapon will work. And they did, and it worked, and they were able to conquer that town. So they the emperor was so happy, he brought the chest to his own treasury, filled it with jewels and pearls, and sent him and saying, "Thank you for your gift." So now Nahum takes home, right, even more jewels than he even came with, plus the goodwill of the emperor. Okay, the story continues. When Nahum, on his way back, he slept in the same inn as on the way there. I don't know, he didn't learn his lesson that this is not a safe place. So the residents, the thieves, were surprised and says, "What did you bring with you to the emperor that he gave you such honor and he gave you such gifts? What happened?" Amar lehu, he says, "I don't know. Whatever I took from here, I gave to them." So, right, he's making believe like he didn't even understand what the problem was. Like he didn't realize that he was robbed. So the people said, "Wait, what did we put in there? Just our dirt. I guess he really liked that dirt. It must be something special." So the residents, they went and tore down their houses, and they went and to get the soil. They needed more soil to bring to the king's palace. This must be special soil because, right, look, it did miracles. So they needed more. So they had to knock down their own houses to get more, and they brought it in boxes to the palace. And then they went to the emperor and says, remember that miracle dirt? That was actually ours, is from our property. And here we're bringing more of it. So they checked it, they brought it to the battlefield, and it was just dirt, it was nothing. And then the emperor said, what, are you making fun of me? And he put those resident thieves to death. Okay, it's a funny story, because not only do they die, but I think it's funny that they also knock down their houses to get the rubble just to, or dirt underneath, in order to send it to the emperor, so they get back what was coming to them, what they tried to do to Nachum Ish Gamzo. And you see, turns out Nachum was right. Everything is for the best. All right, now we get back to the Mishnah. So the Mishnah wanted to know what is the legal definition of a plague, and that it would be sufficient to start doing fasting. And it said if you have a city that can produce 300 soldiers, and in that, so that would be, maybe has 5,000 people in it or something, if you include all the women and children and elderly, and you have 3 people die 3 days in a row, right? 1 person each day. Then that, so it's not just that even if you have a lot of people on one day, it's not yet a plague. Maybe it's just a really bad thing that happened on one day. It's not called a plague unless it's spread out, but at least in that concentration, at least. Okay. Tenora banan hamosiah 500,000 ragli kefar ako ויעשו ממנה 9 מתים ב3 ימים זה אחר זה, הרי זה דבר. So this, we're learning from here that it's actually a ratio. So this is a city that has 1,500 soldiers, so 3 times what the example in the Mishnah, like the village of Akko. And then in that case, if you would, since it's 3 times the amount of population, you'd multiply everything else by 3. So if you have 9 people who die altogether, 3 people on each day for 3 days in a row, then that would be called a plague. And so it all depends on the per capita amount. If 9 people die on one day, or 9 die over a course of 4 days, and so on one day only 1 or 2 or 0 die, then that's not called a plague. It's a sickness, it's still bad, but it doesn't become officially a plague that you have to make the serious fasts on those days. But on the other hand, a city that has 500, so then you would do 3, 1 on each day, and that would be called dever. But if all 3 die on one day, or over 4 days, meaning on one day someone doesn't die, so not 3 in a row, then that's not dever. Okay, so that's the explication of the Mishnah. And now a story that about this. So a city called Derokart, and it was that size of that the Mishnah says 500 soldiers would live there. And 3 people died on one day. So according to what we just said, that's not David. That's just a very intense disease of some kind, but not the kind that would spread and would cause the same alarm as a plague would. Gezar Rav Nachman bar Rav Chisda Taanita, and nevertheless, Rav Nachman, the son of Rav Chisda, said, we're going to make a fast day, a public fast. Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak keman kedebi meir damar yichek negichotav chayav kereb negichotav lo kol sheken. So Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak explained this behavior of Rav Nachman, the son of Rav Chisda, as follows. He says, he must follow the Bimeir regarding an ox that gores. So regarding an ox that gores, the usual case is if an ox kills 3 people, 1 on each day, then it's a shor mu'ad. But what if it kills 3 people on one day? In that case, some people say no, but the Bimeir says a kal vachomer. If it killed 3 people on 3 different days, and yet it's chayav and it's called shor mu'ad, then if it killed 3 people on one day, all the more so. That's even more dangerous, and that would be called a shor mu'ad. And so, therefore, he's used an analogy of the ox that kills to the plague. If a plague that kills 1 person each day for 3 days is called a plague, then if it kills 3 people on one day, that's even worse. And so, certainly, you should make a ta'anit. And so Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak was able to explain the law. Amar le Rav Nachman bar Rav Chisda le Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak lekumor lete legaban. Rav Nachman bar Rav Chisda, who was a resident of that area, heard what Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak said, and that comparison between shor and the plague was brilliant legal analysis. And he said, I want the master to come and live with us, right? You are worthy. We want you to be our teacher. And so come, move to our city. So he declined to come to the city based on the Baraita. Rabbi Yosef said, the place of a person is not what gives him honor, but rather a person honors the city. His point is that, you're inviting me to come to a bigger city with prominent people in it, and most people would say, "Oh, see, by moving, I will be more honored." But he's not seeking honor, and he says, right, it's not the place that brings a person honor, but rather honor is conferred on a place that has a great person in it. So it doesn't matter if I'm a great person; it doesn't matter where I am, and I don't have to move somewhere in order to seek honor. So I'm not so special. I will stay in my place, and if honor should come to me where I am, then so be it. And so he declines to move. Sheken masin bahar Sinai, and we see a few examples of where a place itself does not have intrinsic value. Oh, if I go there, then I'll be special. But rather, it's a value is conferred upon a place because of someone or something that happens there. So in Har Sinai, shekolz ma shechina shiruya alav amra Torah gamason v'bakar al yir'u el mol hahar hahu. As while the Shekhinah came upon the mountain during Matan Torah, then the mountain was holy and special. And during that time, we had to make a law and say, make sure that none of the animals come near the mountain. It's a holy place, and it's dangerous for them. It's not appropriate for them. But after Matan Torah was over, right? Show's over. Shekhinah leaves. So then, when the shofar sounds a long sound to announce that the ceremony is completed, then when the Shekhinah finishes, then everyone can go up the mountain, all the people, the animals. Then the mountain is not holy anymore. The mountain is not holy in and of itself. It's just a mound of rocks. It's only holy when there's divine presence there. So too, a city will be a special city if there's righteous people in it, but it's not the city that makes them honored, but it's them that make the city honored. And similarly, when they were encamped in the desert, the Ohel Moed was holy, and then anyone who had sarat had to leave the camp. But that's only when Ohel Moed, when the Mishkan was put together and was standing. Then they have to go out. But then once they were traveling and they rolled up the parochet, the curtain, the whole Ohel Moed / Mishkan was folded. So then the Shekhinah is not there. Shekhinah is not among them. And then the camp is no longer holy. So it's not that place where they happen to camp that makes it holy, but rather Ohel Moed being there. And once it's on the move, and then that area is no longer holy. Okay. Amar le. Now, Rav Nachman bar Rav Chisda, who was in that town, and he's the one that extended the invitation. He didn't want to give up his learning with Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. He was the master who made the analogy with the ox. So if he's not going to come to our town, we should go to his town because we have to learn from him. Amar le, after Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak saw how insistent he is, and he said, if you don't come to us, we're coming to you. So then he says, okay, I found another justification, different justification, and I will move. What is it? Mutav yavo maneh ben peras etzel maneh ben maneh. Val yavo maneh ben maneh etzel maneh ben peras. Better for something worth 100, the son of something worth, peras means a half, 50, should go to someone who is 100, the son of 100. And the son of 100, and someone who's 100, the son of 100, should not go to 100, the son of 50. The point is that even though Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak is a great sage and has so much to teach, his lineage is not as great as that of Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, bar Rav Chisda, the local rabbi. So this is therefore someone who's 100, right? He's saying, I'm 100. But my father was not so great. Was not such a learned scholar. So I don't have lineage like Rav Nachman bar Rav Chisda. He's 100, the son of 100. So therefore, my lineage is not so great. It's okay. I will show Rav Nachman bar Rav Chisda honor by moving to his place, even though Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak is actually going to be the teacher and is going to grace the city with his presence. All right, beautiful story. Now, more stories regarding plagues. Besura Havat de Barta. There was a plague in Sura, in the city, in Bavel. Beshibute de Rav lahavat de Barta. This city was where Rav was. It was the Rosh Yeshiva. But in the neighborhood of Rav, there was no plague. Everywhere else there was plague, just not in his neighborhood. So everybody looking said, must be because of his merit. Sabaru minem mishum dechute de Rav. Then Afish, he has great merit. That's why the plague stopped in his neighborhood. It chazidahu bechelma Rav de nefisha zechute tuba ha mileta zutra le Rav. But someone was revealed to the residents in a dream that this is not because of Rav's merit. Rav's merit is so great, it wouldn't be used up on small things like this. This is relatively small. Therefore, there's a different reason why this neighborhood was saved. Rather, it's because of some guy, not a learned person, just a regular man, but he did one good deed. He would always lend his hoe and his shovel to people who needed to go bury their loved ones in a cemetery and didn't have to go through extra expense. He would lend it to them. And so what you see here is that you don't have to be the Gadol Hador to have great merit. If just doing regular kind deeds, daily kindness, and on a regular basis, that is sufficient for having merit to avoid a plague coming to his neighborhood. Havat delekta. Similar story. In this other city, there was a fire. The whole city was on fire, but his neighborhood was safe. So what do you mean? The nafish must be because of Rav Huna's merit. He has great merit. But the people there saw in a dream, Rav Huna has such great merit. That's beyond. This is too petty, a small thing. This is like asking the mayor of the city to come pick up the garbage in front of your house. So he's dealing with bigger things than that. You know why this neighborhood was saved? Because there's a woman there. She heats up her oven on Fridays, and she would let other people come, or maybe other times too, and she would let her neighbors come and use the oven. People who are poor, they didn't have wood, they didn't have an oven, so they could come and cook their food in her oven, right? A simple act of kindness from a simple person, and don't underestimate that. Underestimate it. That also brings great merit. Amru le Rav Yehuda atu kamse. So one time they told Rav Yehuda, locusts have come. We've seen them. They're in our area. Gezat Taanit. And he said, oh, locusts, very dangerous. They'll destroy all the crops. So he made a fast day. Amru le laka mafsedan. This is, wait, hold on. Don't jump to conclusions. They're not destroying anything. The locusts are just, they're there. They're flying around, but they're not eating anything. Rav Yehuda said a sharp line. What, did they bring their suitcases with them? Did they bring their provisions? They brought their food with them and to not eating crops? Just wait, you'll see. They're going to come and destroy everything. Maybe they're full. They just ate up a whole farm that in a different city. But the danger is here. They are going to come. So we have to make a fast right away. Don't delay. Amru le Rav Yehuda, Ika motana behazireh. Rav Yehuda, same sage. Right, he knew how to see danger coming even from far. So one time there was a plague among the pigs. Gezat Taanita, and he made a fast. Nema kasaba Rav Yehuda maka meshulachat mimin achad meshulachat mikol min. So why would he do that? What does he think? That a plague affecting one species will come and affect another species? This is a pig disease. It's not going to affect human beings, right? Diseases don't jump from one species to another. Well, we know that that's wrong now. So that's true in general, that disease of one species doesn't affect the other, but pigs are different because their intestinal tract is actually similar to human beings. I think science does bear out that there are some anatomical similarities between human bodies and those of pigs. So he said, we have to worry. So he knew his stuff. He knew his medicine and science, and knew that this is a danger. They told Shmuel, there's a plague in this faraway city, Bechozai. He heard this. Gazat Taanita, even though it's far away, he made a fast. They said it's so far away, it's not going to come here. Why are you so worried? Listen, there's no river that's crossing here that will stop it, right? And so therefore it travels and it will come here. As long as there's people traveling back and forth, it will come here too. Not so far. They told Rav Nachman, who lives in Bavel, they said, listen, there's a plague in Eretz Yisrael. He made a fast all the way out in Bavel. Amar im shivcha lo kol sheken. His reason is, if the mistress of a house is afflicted, the maidservants won't be, all the more so. The analogy is Eretz Yisrael is the mistress. She is the princess. She's the important person, and she deserves a plague. We, Bavel, are a lower level, and certainly we will get a plague. I guess this must have happened in homes where there's the owners of the home would get sick. Then the maidservants also, they're living with worse conditions or worse food than the masters. So if a disease spreads, then they will certainly get it. And so we on Bavel, we are less worthy than Eretz Yisrael. So we analyze the story. The only reason in this case that Rav Nachman made a fast is because it was from Eretz Yisrael coming to Bavel. So if they don't have merit, then we all certainly won't have merit to save us. But what if there's two cities in Bavel, two cities that are they're both maidservants? So then maybe it would be less likely because one maidservant is sick. The other maidservant may not get sick. Maybe she's not susceptible to that disease as much. They're on the same level, not higher to lower. But this is contradicted by another story where they came and told Shmuel, they told Shmuel there's a plague in Bechozai, and he's in the Harde'ah, and even though they are both in Bavel, he's nevertheless made a Taanit. No, that's also different because there are caravans. That's a route that go back and forth. So the caravans are going to bring the plague from one place to another. And we know now from our recent experience how even if there's a plague in one country, as long as it's one flight, all it takes is one flight to another country, and it will spread in that other country as well. So you see that amazingly, unfortunately, in ancient times they had a lot of experience with plagues, and the sages knew how dangerous they were, and they knew how to take precautions against them. All right. memetibta dirkia kol yoma. Ulabaye kol ma'ale yoma de shabeta. Ulrava kol ma'ale yoma de chipure. Okay, we're going to end with this long story about the point is about the merits of even ordinary people can have great merit, sometimes equal to or above that of great sages. So there was a man named Abba Umana. Abba, just a regular name, and he was a bloodletter, what we would call a doctor today. And he would receive greetings from Metibta, from the heavenly of Rekia, from the heavenly Metibta Yeshiva every day. What this means, maybe a bat kol would come out and say, "Good morning, Abba," the bloodletter, right? Every day he got a sign from heaven that said, you're okay. Well, Abaye received that same sign only once a week. And Rava, that's Abaye's colleague, he received that sign only once a year on Erev Yom Kippur. So this is quite amazing that this simple bloodletter was more deemed more worthy to receive this divine greeting than these greatest sages of the time. So Abaye was depressed. He says, I work so hard, I learned so much Torah, I teach so much, right? I try to be so righteous, and yet I can't reach the level of this simple Abba, the bloodletter. So he wants to know by what merit. So they said to him, you can't do what he does, right? There's no way that you can reach his level. So now we're curious, what does he do that's so great? When he was perform his surgeries, he would put men separately and women separately. You have to be modest. After all, during the surgery, probably uncovering different limbs of the body to do bloodletting, and it's more appropriate that it should be done in separate quarters. In a special garment with a slit just in the place where he makes the incision for the bloodletting, and that way, when someone comes, when a woman would come for this procedure, he would give her this special garment so that he would not see anything immodest in her, right? Although in such a situation, it would be excusable for him. He's doing important surgery to see those exposed limbs, but he went the extra mile to say, I even want to be suspected of that. And so he used a special garment. Furthermore, he had a hidden place in his office where the customers would pay and put their coins there. And he didn't count. If whoever can afford it, they would put money there. If you couldn't afford it, then you would put less or nothing there and wouldn't be embarrassed. He didn't know who paid and who did not pay. If a Torah scholar came, he wouldn't take money. Generally, Torah scholars were so busy with that, they didn't have businesses, and it was difficult for them to afford it. So he said, I want you to be healthy. And so after he was done, Abba would give him money and said, go get food. It's important to get better. After bloodletting, you feel very weak. Just like, now when you give blood, and we give much less blood than they took, I'm sure. And so you have to eat something to become healthier. And they didn't have money even for food. So not only would he not charge them for the surgery, he would even give them food he would even give them money to buy food to get healthy. So Abaye was curious about what he did. So he sent two sages to investigate what's going on with him. What does Abba, the bloodletter, do that's so great? So Abba, the bloodletter, he sat them down and he gave them food and drink, and he put mouths out for them to sleep. He really took care of them. especially if I'm assuming that they actually did a surgery, and so they felt tired. He says, "Come sleep here on these nice mats." So in the morning, they wanted to test him, see really how just how great is he really sincere about this. So they rolled up the rugs, these nice fancy rugs, Persian rugs, right, that they had, and these two sages took the rugs with them. They stole the rugs, and so they go out in the marketplace, and Abba found them. Met them there. And so then the sages said, "Hey, look at these rugs. Hey, about how much you think these rugs are worth?" So they're goading him, right? Now, anyone normal, if if that happened to you, you would say, "Hey, those are my rugs. So what happened? Why did you steal these rugs? Give them back to me." But he didn't say that. I think they're worth about this much. No, maybe they're more, right? They're like, they couldn't believe it. He says, no, that's what I paid for them. That's what they're worth. He says, yeah, well, these rugs aren't yours. We took them from you, right? He was like, I bought the same ones for the same price, for this price. He says, no, these are yours. But he wasn't angry. So the sages were so baffled, they said, we have to ask you a question. When we took the rugs, what were you thinking? What was going through your mind? Didn't you suspect us of something? I assume that all of a sudden you heard that there was someone that was taken hostage and you had to raise money quickly in order to redeem the person. And that's why you took the rugs and to go and save someone's life. So the sages were just amazed that they did this terrible thing to him, and he suspected nothing bad. So they said, okay, here we want to give you back the rugs, right? Here, give them back. They're yours, and we see how righteous you are. So from the moment I saw they were gone, I already dedicated them for charity. I already said, assume they're using them for a good reason. They'll be my tzedakah. And so therefore, since I already gave them, I can't take them back. This is tzedakah money, these rugs. So they wouldn't take them back. So that's end of the story. See how righteous he is, that even after all that, he wouldn't even take back and says, go give them to a poor person. Okay, so this Abba, right? Everybody thinks he's just a simple person. I compare him to a doctor, but really in those days, in more recent times, the barbers were also bloodletters. So he's just a practitioner, not a great sage, not someone so well known, and yet his simple acts of kindness to so many people gave him that merit that he got the divine greeting every single day. Okay, in the meantime, so now Rava says, okay, I can never reach the level of this Abba because I'm not a bloodletter and he does all these great things. But how about my colleague? Rava only gets a greeting once a year, Abaye all the time. So what's with that? So Amru le mistayich deka magnit akula karcha. And so they got a message, and it was said to him, maybe also in a dream, says, don't worry, you protect your entire city, right? So you have great merit, and your merit protects the city from plague and all these things. And so different people's merits go to different places, and it's not up to us to know how to count and how not to count. But everybody should, be their best, be righteous, and that merit will be a blessing for them. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.